Welcome to 5 and 5 from the One Stop Co-op Shop, where I discuss 5 key elements of a game in about 5 minutes. I'm Michael Kelly, and today I'm looking at Monster Hunter World, the boss battling, monster hunting, gear crafting game from Steamforged. And disclaimer that I was sent a copy of one of the base games for the review. There have been a lot of great boss battling games like Oathsworn, Aeon Trespass Odyssey, and the upcoming Primal. How does Monster Hunter World do against all of those? Let's find out and get to the list. So for my number 5 a point, I'm looking at the gathering phase, where you go through a little narrative adventure to track down the monster you're going to fight. And you'll read little narrative entries, discard a certain number of time cards, which will give you less time or more time to actually fight the monster at the end, and get resources for crafting. And on the positive side, this is very quick to resolve, so if you don't want to read a ton of text, it doesn't do that to you. But on the negative side, there is a good amount of repetition in the entries when you're hunting the same monster, even at different levels. And it does feel a bit like much ado about nothing, because in the end, you just end up with a little bit more or less time, and you end up with a little bit more or fewer materials. My number 4 point is focused on the campaign structure and the crafting. And to start with the crafting, it's fun, as crafting often is, and especially upgrading your weapons is really neat because your little damage deck, kind of Gloomhaven-ish, gets better, but you also upgrade the cards in your decks. You're using cooler and cooler combinations in your card play. On the negative side, the armor upgrades are much less exciting. They just give you moderate armor boosts and sometimes some elemental defense. And overall, the biggest potential drawback with the crafting, like in most of these systems, is that sometimes you have to grind the same type of encounter, and you might just keep on missing the exact resource that you need, so you can have a frustrating lack of progress for several fights in a row. As for the campaign structure itself, it pretty much just cuts all the chaff. You're just going through a certain number of days, fighting one monster a day, generally speaking, so it's fine. It kind of gets out of the way, doesn't do anything interesting, but also doesn't have any major drawbacks. And a quick thing I need to mention, if you don't want to engage in any of the campaign and crafting content, they have a pretty robust one-off skirmish mode that tells you exactly which weapons and armor to bring into battle against any of the enemies at any level. My third point is focusing on time in the game, and I'm really talking about 2 different elements here. First of all, there's the time deck that I already mentioned running out a bit as you try to find the monster. You also discard 1 time card each time a player takes a turn, and if these run out, then you immediately lose the battle against the monster, which is never really a fun way for things to end. I'd much rather get defeated than just have the monster kind of be like, whoops, our time is up, and slink off. Additionally, there are several cards, if you have the bad luck to draw them, that force you to discard a bunch of other time cards, which can make that less satisfying ending more likely, so there's a good amount of swinginess here. But there are some other elements related to time in the game that also aren't so great. You have this damage deck that you're going through, and whenever you run out, you have to take a turn to sharpen your weapon, which is pretty much just a null turn for you, so that can be a little bit annoying. And speaking of null turns and downtime, the way the enemies let a certain number of players activate is a pretty cool system. It will give you 1, 2, or 3 activations to split among the players, but it does mean a very high player count games. You might have a whole bunch of monster activations and hero activations before you get to go again. For my number 2 point, let's look at the monsters that give the game its name. There are 4 or 5 in each base set, and then they have stronger and weaker variations, 3 each. And the variations definitely aren't that exciting. I'd compare it to KDM or Aeon Trespass, where yes, things do change a good bit, but still, if you're fighting a lion, you're fighting a lion. But as for monster versus monster, things get more interesting. They do have their own little unique rules. They have their own configurations of terrain, and while terrain isn't that exciting in the game, the monsters do use it in different ways, which can be pretty fun. And the big thing is that each monster has its own deck of activation cards, and if you fight the same monster several times, you'll get a feel for the ones that are most dangerous. They also give you some nice warnings on the back of each card of what the attack is most likely to do, which can let you intelligently dodge it. And the monster turns are very, very quick to resolve, which can cut down the downtime I mentioned earlier. So the variety is pretty good with the monsters, but I think it goes one step better with the hunters. They each have their own unique deck, their own unique upgrade cards to improve their deck as they get better weapons, and each one has its own special rule that isn't too complicated but does make it feel appreciably different. On top of that variety, the core stamina card play in the game is pretty interesting. You're playing cards from your hand to do attacks, also to do defense, but you're also playing them face down to sprint in and out of the monster's range, to dodge monster attacks, and they only only come off slowly, which, can be frustrating sometimes if your entire board gets really filled up. But you can always use potions to get rid of everything and clear your board back out again. A lot of the heroes have cards that'll combo together. It's a fun system. It's thematically tied together. The variety is strong. And this is where you'll be spending most of your time and your thought in the game. So it's pretty neat. So overall, you might want to check out Monster Hunter World if you're looking for an accessible, quick playing boss battling game. This one compared to KDM, Primal, Oathsworn, Aeon Trespass Odyssey, it's cheaper, it's easier to get to the table, it's faster to play, you don't have to do the campaign if you don't want to, and at the same time there's nice variety between the classes and the monsters, even with just one of the base sets, so that might be a good time for you. But on the other hand, you might want to avoid this one if you're looking for a stronger narrative experience, if you're looking for a more in-depth campaign experience, if you're looking for more strategy, less luck, more tactical depth, or if you want to get a lot of game at a low price, because even just one of the base sets is still fairly expensive, mainly because of the giant minis in the box. And if you want to see the game in action, Colin has a playthrough from a while back you can check out. Good gaming, everyone, and I'll see you at the next stop.